Harvard Law professor Lawrence Lessig is running for president. He's one of 6 candidates on the Democratic side vying for the White House, and the only non-politician. And the fact he's raised $1 million in less than a month should give the impression he's running an actual campaign, especially when you consider that Martin O'Malley, former 2-term governor and 2-term mayor, raised $2 million during the first month of his presidential campaign, and former Rhode Island governor and former Senator Lincoln Chafee has raised less than $400,000 in the first 6 months of his campaign, with most of that coming from a loan from the candidate himself. And then there's former Senator Jim Webb, candidate so under the radar that Mother Jones has looked into whether he is actually running for president. Lessig is running at least as serious a campaign as Jim Webb and Lincoln Chafee, but unlike those candidates, he's been left off a number of national polls. Here's the catch-22. To qualify for CNN's Democratic presidential debate, a candidate must average at least 1% in a combination of 3 national polls released between August 1st and October 10th, and based on those rules, Lessig's campaign could be over just as it's getting started. Joining me now, Democratic presidential candidate Lawrence Lessig. Okay, so the argument about the debate, right, is like, yeah, it's their network and they come up with their rules, and, you know, 1% in 3 polls isn't such a super high bar. Why should we put you on our stage?
Yeah, well, I think the question should be, what are the viable campaigns out there? And I think we've demonstrated we have a viable campaign. We have not just $1 million in less than a month. We have a real staff. We've got ads going up in the states.
You just had a $150,000 ad buy.
Yeah, in Iowa and New Hampshire, right? So we've got a real campaign with a real issue. That's the important thing here, right? I mean, this is a fundamental issue, and my perspective on this issue on that stage would be fundamentally different from everybody else that's out there. But the real challenge, Chris, I think is to get this issue discussed in the media. I mean, the reason why it's difficult to get 1% is I don't have, 1,000 shows talking about this issue over and over again.
So the issue is this sort of massively distorting influence of money in politics, particularly the sort of concentration of wealth, and the way that concentration of wealth essentially subverts our basic, most fundamental commitment to one person, one vote, civic equality.
So that is one issue, and that's certainly one issue that I'm talking about. But the other issue, we see in this House Republican disaster right now, because of the stupid way we gerrymander districts, we construct a Congress that is more polarized than it would be if we adopted a proportional representation system. And the second part of the reform I'm talking about would fundamentally change the way districts are drawn so that you could begin to have a Congress that was more representative of America, right? This is all the same point. We don't have a representative democracy. Right. We've got to get one if we're going to have a government that can work.
So what's happening here is there are all these people that are running that say, elect me to run this machine. And you're saying this machine that everyone's running to elect is just a fundamentally broken machine. It is an unusable machine that you could get the best person in the world to crank the machine and it will just keep giving you terrible outcomes, right?
And how do we get people to talk about this point? I mean,
But people, here's the thing, though. People do talk. So when you talk about money in politics, right? I mean, people talk about it all the time, right? I mean, I just used it in my intro as a benchmark that you're serious because you raise money, right? We talk about super PACs. We talk about big money donors. We talk about, oh, so-and-so can stay in the race because some billionaire car dealer really likes him, right? What we don't talk about, though, is that it's just like, okay, well, what do we do about that, right?
But that's the point. We can do a lot about it. We could change the way campaigns are funded. Not the super PAC issue. That the Supreme Court's got to clean up. But we could change the way campaigns are funded tomorrow. And if we did, and made it so candidates for Congress were not spending 30 to 70% of their time talking to the tiniest fraction of the 1%, but instead raising money from everyone in their district or across the country, that would radically change the concentrated interest in Congress that's producing what Francis Fukuyama calls the vetocracy of our government.
Vetocracy meaning too many veto points, too many choke points, too many places where, in this case, 40 members of the House of Representatives can say, the whole thing's done.
Right. We've got to focus on the fact that we've allowed this representative democracy to fall apart. It is a broken machine, to use your metaphor, right? And there are ways we could fix it, and we could fix it if we just focused on how to do it.
But here's the, right, I guess there's part of me that feels like there's something about this that feels a little, the term they used to use in Chicago was goo-goo, like good government types, right? It was like the machine would crank on, with a daily machine. And there are these folks who would come in and be like, no, this whole thing's corrupt. And it's like, well, that's actually just like human power.
Yeah, but the difference is,
and you can come in with your reforms.
No, Chris, in Chicago, government worked. It actually did stuff. The point about our government is we've got really important problems that we can't address, and we won't address them. All the things Bernie is talking about, all the things Hillary talking about,
Bernie Sanders.
Senator Sanders is talking about, are the most most important things we need to address, but we cannot address them until we deal with this problem. So this is not just goo-goo. This is fundamental reality. It's the practical reality of how our government can
Okay,
work.
so then here's the question. Let's say you don't get on the debate stage, right? I mean, then the question becomes, okay, you're going to do it. You're going to run for president, right? I mean, can you build something here? You raised $1 million a month, right? Like, that's the test. The proof is in the pudding. If this is real politics, right, then can you go out and do the stuff of real politics to build something?
Yeah, the challenge is to get media to be willing to talk about something more than the horse race or the email problem of Hillary Clinton, to actually talk about what would solve the problem we have in government right now. And if we can get in the media to be able to do that and get to the level necessary to be in the next debate, I think our polls show us this would radically change the way this debate, this election develops.
You know, it has been funny, just that one of the core messages of Donald Trump has basically been that the whole system's rigged and corrupt, and I know because I used to be the one paying to rig and corrupt it.
So it's bipartisan now, like we got recognition on both sides.
That I think, I mean, there's one thing that's clear to me, and is that it's not, like, Republicans will tell you, like, yes, big money has too much influence. I mean, that shows up reliably in the polling, but just also anecdotally. When you're out reporting, when you're talking to people, that is conventional wisdom.
So why aren't we doing something about it? Why aren't we talking about it? Why isn't this at least 10% of what is being discussed? But instead we spend 8 weeks trying to lime the depths of Donald Trump's brain, as opposed to talking about a real issue that if we solved it would make it possible for us to govern.
Lawrence Lessig, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Great to see you, Chris.